Welcome back to Refit and Sail. In this episode, we're going to be doing some structural repairs to this Contessa 32. We're going to be turning a lot of this area into dust, removing some broken wood, putting some strengthening back in, glassing it all back up and making it all strong and secure for the next 50 years. So welcome back to Refit and Sail. If you've seen the channel before, you will recognise what this is. It's yet another Contessa 32. A lot of what I do on this channel is Contessa based, but I'm looking forward to doing some other boats fairly soon, I hope. But in this episode, as I said at the start, we've got to take a look at some failed secondary bonding in this area. Now, Contessa 32s, don't get me wrong, they are fantastic boats. They are generally very well built. They are a very seaworthy design, but there are, like all boats, a few little issues that have cropped up over the years. These are all old boats now as well, unless you're able to sail around in one of the new ones that are being built now at Jeremy Rogers Limited over in Lymington. But the vast majority of the boats that are available are from the mid to late 70s or the very early 80s. So they are showing their age in a few places. Now, one thing about the boat is it has this beautiful kind of wine glass shape like this, and that's one of the reasons that it is such a seaworthy design and so well regarded. But one of the issues with that wine glass shape is that when you lean that shape all the way over, and particularly this design of boat, is there's quite a large flat area there. And if you are sailing offshore, in a modern boat, you will have probably experienced a degree of slamming where you have a very flat underbody forward of the keel which can slam into the waves. Well, when you have that wine glass shape, you end up leaning it over like this and you have a fairly flat area just adjacent to the keel, and it's not common just to these Contessas, it's common to a lot of boats that are of this kind of design. And if you are offshore in really big seas, you can get a bit of slamming, and as a result you can sometimes get a little bit of secondary bonding failure of the internal structure that helps keep these boats in one piece. Now, I've seen this quite a lot. I've repaired quite a few Contessas. The new ones that you build now over in Lymington, they have this kind of modification already built into it, and lots of boats have had this mod done over the years. So let me show you what the problem is to start with. Without me in the way, you can see on the starboard side here there is that locker front there, which is effectively a stringer that is glassed into the hull, and it resists the flexing of the hull on that side. Now, on the port side, you have this U-shaped kind of dinette area, and so you don't have naturally that bulkhead to bulkhead structural member. So you have a locker front that's kind of glassed in there, and then some additional locker fronts that are here and here, but you don't have effectively a stringer that runs from bulkhead to bulkhead on the original build boats. Now, if I come in a little bit closer, you can see what's happened here. This isn't original, that's something that has been added at some point, and someone has done the same thing under this locker lid here, if I pull that out. But it is not a continuous kind of piece of wood, that's just an additional piece, and if you look behind, there's kind of nothing there apart from down here, we've got some damaged secondary bonding that's pulled away from the hull. Because you don't have that full length stringer in here, the area is liable to have a little bit of flexing, and as soon as you start getting a little bit of flexing, you get a little bit of secondary bonding failure, and the more it moves, the more it fails, and effectively the secondary bonding will just kind of start unzipping itself away from the hull all the way along. So the fix for this issue is to remove these pieces of additional wood that have been put in but they haven't been tied into the locker front here. Remove all the broken tabbing and then put a piece of plywood in, which will effectively be a bulkhead to bulkhead stringer. Put it in, I'm going to glue it and probably screw it to the back of this piece of furniture here, and then glass it in all the way along, and then we'll reinstate all this top back in afterwards. I potentially could do it without removing this, but it's going to be quite difficult to do so. So the better option really to kind of do it once and hopefully not have to revisit this is to remove this lid here and then remove all this wood here, which is probably partially detached, and then grind it out and repair it that way. Visually you can see obviously these bits of tabbing have pulled away, but down the bottom here it's not so obvious. But if I come in with my screwdriver, it's got a metal end on it, you can hear the sound of solid attached laminate there. But as soon as we get here, you can hear the sound change. So this is detached, this is attached. So you can clearly hear the sound change between the two, but this is all going to have to get chopped out to affect the repair. What I'll also do, run down there, that kind of sounds attached there, mostly. Up here at the bulkhead, that is all attached because I repaired that a couple of years ago, so that's all good and hasn't moved. So it is just this area here where it's flexed kind of on this joint here, and if we leave it, I mean the boat could be sailed as it is, but if we leave it, that flexing continually will slowly unzip the bonding that is all the way around this kind of area, and the boat will become increasingly flexible, which is not what anyone really wants. So unfortunately for me, that does mean that I'm about to cover myself in dust. I'm going to get suited up, mask, goggles, all the rest of it, and unfortunately I'm going to have to get grinding. That's the first bit of the puzzle removed, so just chop the tabbing out around the back there, and I haven't been particularly careful because all that wood's going to get replaced. So that is now ready for me to start pulling this framing out, which is kind of all loose. You can see where it's all broken here, so that can all be removed. A bit more destruction has been done as I disassemble the various mods that have been put in here. You could see where this kind of secondary bonding that had been put in to make this mod, and whoever glassed it basically glassed it over paint and goodness knows what else there. It came out fairly easily. It wasn't too much of a difficult job. Same deal up there, the glass that had been put in, and this is why you can't really repair this without taking the top off here, because you just can't access it. So given how little effort it took to remove that, so that's well worth doing. So that piece came out as well. So unfortunately I can't put off the grinding any longer. I'm going to put all these bits probably straight in the skip because I don't think they're going to be much use as any templates, so they can all go in the bin. I'm going to make a cup of tea and then I'm going to have to put the mask on and do some proper grinding. Well folks, a couple of days have passed. The dust has quite literally settled in here since I did all the grinding. I didn't record all the grinding because one, my camera ran out of battery, and two, I didn't want to waste the internet. I always leave my grinding to the end of the day if possible, or doing it as an afternoon job, because I know I can finish up, go and have a shower, get myself clean, because I can wear face mask, goggles, all the rest of it, coverall, but it still kind of gets in and it's horrible and it makes you itch. So I do that at the end of the day. Some of it was removed with a screwdriver and a little bit of teasing, and I was able to pull some of the laminate off where it just wasn't particularly well attached, where it had pulled away over the years. Other areas it kind of needed to be ground back to prep all the surface. What did I use to do all that grinding? Well, I mostly did it with this chap here, which is my Makita 9031. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in buying one of these. It's a really, really useful belt sander. The belts are about 30mm wide, so it's quite nice and manageable, and you can get in and you can use your vacuum cleaner kind of underneath it and suck up most of the dust, not always all of it, but it does make it a slightly cleaner job. For when I need to get into slightly tighter corners, I also have this little baby one. This is a cheapy Black & Decker. I think they call it a finger file, but it's basically the same thing. It's a small belt sander. These are about 10 or 12mm wide, these belts on here, and it's quite useful for just buzzing in little corners that you can't get to with a bigger one. The other option, which I didn't use this time, is using an angle grinder. So I had this on standby with some 40 or 60 grit flat discs, which I attached there. This does very, very fast removal. It's slightly harder to control. It's very easy to remove material where you don't want it removed. The biggest problem with these is the dust goes everywhere. Using this, a bit more controllable, and you can control the dust a little bit better. But sometimes this is the way to go. If you know you're going to be creating loads of dust anyway, it kind of doesn't matter. Just mask up and get on with it. Right, I will turn the camera around and show you what it looks like. So starting at the forward end, you can see it's all been ground back. I haven't done the bit which ties the main bulkhead into the hull very much. I did it where there's a little bit of loose stuff, but the stuff below that, that laminate in there, I replaced that a few years ago, and that's all still perfectly sound. So that is all good. And then if we can turn the camera around, you can see the back edge of there. I did have to grind all this laminate out here because that had detached, and so that is ready for glassing back in. Same deal here, kind of looking aft along the back of that piece of furniture. You can see everything's been ground back to the original laminate layer, and then going to the aft end, I've had to remove all the glass that was in there because that was all detached. And in fact, that bit in there, I could literally get a screwdriver underneath it and then lever it up and just pull it off. It was pretty bad in there. So that will all get glassed back in. I'm going to be templating the piece of plywood that I need to put in here in the tried and tested method that I use on many of these videos. If you've seen this before, I apologise, but if you haven't, I use thin strips of plywood. So this is 5 or 6mm plywood I've just ripped up into strips, and I can place that in and use a hot melt glue gun just to glue it, tack it in place, and then I can run pieces of that thin plywood down all the way along here and just make a kind of a spider's web of little bits of thin plywood, which I can then pull out afterwards, put on top of my piece of plywood, which has not yet been delivered, and cut out that shape. It will need some finessing when I get it back down to the boat, but it's a fairly quick, easy and pretty accurate way to get a template. So I'm going to be using that when I make this string up piece that's going to go in here, but I'll be doing exactly the same process when it comes to making the new locker tops, which are going to go on the top of all this once I've built all the stuff underneath. The other thing that you'll be used to me saying if you watch my channel regularly is that I ask you to, if possible, give me a thumbs up down below. If you're enjoying this content, even better, you can hit that subscribe button down the bottom there as well. That really genuinely does help grow the channel. I think, looking at the stats, about 15% of the viewers or regular viewers of my videos are currently subscribed. So I'd really like to get that up to at least 20 or 25%, if at all possible. So it only takes a second, costs you nothing. Press that button on the subscribe, and thank you very much if you have done so. And there we have my template all made up. I'll just spin the camera around. You can see it's a bit rough and ready, but it just means that I can take the shape off that I need and place that on the plywood when it's delivered next week, and cut it out and trim it probably just to get it to fit. Well folks, you join me in the workshop here, and it's very, very windy outside, so I apologise if there's some background noise, but I have brought my template around. This is going to be my stringer, and I've had a plywood delivery. I've also had delivery of lots of other wood, which is out of shot for some other jobs. So I'm simply going to clamp this down to my piece of plywood using some clamps. So these sort of quick clamps are really good. You kind of open and close them and unclip them, but also don't discount these spring clamps. These are super, super cheap. They kind of go rusty after a while, but these are really handy if you just need lots and lots of clamps. So I can simply clamp this down to my piece of wood, making sure my lines all kind of line up with where I want them, draw around it and cut it out. Well, I'm back on a boat now and I have my piece of plywood that's been cut out. I have given it one quick trial fit in there, and then I've worked out roughly where I need to finesse it a little bit. So because the side of the hull obviously slopes to some extent, and also there's bits of tabbing which are holding the bulkheads in, I just need to go in and trim it a little bit. So I'm going to go in and give it just a bit of a trim and a finesse with my little belt sander, the trusty Makita, and see if I can get this to fit snugly in its hole. Time to pop it back in and see how close we are. Right, it's the wrong way around to start with, so let's spin this around inside the boat, which is easier said than done without knocking anything. And then slide it into its home. Bit closer, but no cigar yet. I'm going to have to get the pen out and give it another little trim. But every time I remove some material, I can drop it down a bit closer to where it needs to fit, and just mark off where it touches and it's not going in any further, so I can remove a bit more material. One more little buzz around and hopefully I'll have this the right shape. Just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying what you are watching or you are learning something from the videos that I make, then you can buy me a beer as a thank you. There is a link down in the description. It's a PayPal link where you can send me £5, $10, 15 yen, 20 escudos, or whatever it is that you wish to donate is very, very welcome. To those that do donate regularly, in particular, thank you very, very much. It really does help keep the lights on the show here. This isn't my main job. I'm not a full-time YouTubist. I am definitely not an influencer, which someone called me the other day, and I told him to go away, but not that politely. But I do enjoy making these videos and I do really enjoy the feedback. But for those of you that donate, thank you very much. If you wish to donate, the link's down there. Right, I'm going to do some work. Well, here it is, finally in place. Unfortunately, I did have to do a bit more grinding. I was looking at some suspect tabbing. There was some there, and there was some kind of tucked down the back here that I just didn't like the look of, and it was all kind of starting to detach. So I thought, rather than kind of hide it under new laminate, laminating on top of slightly detached laminate is generally a bad idea. But the little bulkhead that we need is now in place. I've just held it in place with a few screws just at the moment, so I'm happy with its position. Well, folks, I can't put it off any longer. I'm going to have to get on and put some glass in here. I can't remember if I said what glass I was going to be using when I was recording this yesterday. I'm going to be using an initial couple of layers of this stuff, which is Combi Mat. It is a biaxial cloth which has CSM sewn to it, because that is a little bit more structural than using what I'm going to lay up over the top of that, which is good old-fashioned chop strand mat, which is this stuff here. So I'm going to be laying this all up using a polyester laminating resin, and then once it's all finished, I'll leave a slightly tacky uncured resin on the surface, which I can then coat with polyester flow coat afterwards. So we'll end up with a nice white clean polyester surface once it's all done. So I could use epoxy for this. I know a lot of people in DIY land use epoxy. I use epoxy myself from time to time. In fact, I use it quite a lot. But for this application, polyester resin is absolutely perfect, and it's going to work really well for gluing this boat back together. So without further ado, I'm going to set up a camera over there, and then I can catalyse some resin. I'm going to put the heating back on because it is cool today. It's not too cold, but it is cool. So as soon as I've switch the heater off. The temperature's dropped in here, so get the heating on, get the camera on, and get rolling on some glass and resin on here. Well, the bonding, the laminating in here is now all done. I didn't record this yesterday when I just finished it because it was pretty stinky in here and I just wanted to shut the door and go and have a shower, but I'll show you it in a minute. So I've just been to the workshop and picked up some Doug fir. I've roughly cut it to the sizes I want, so this is about 2 inches by 1 inch roughly, and I'm going to be building the framework that's going to be going in here to support the new locker top. Once that's done, I can template for the top that's going to go on it. So without further ado, I need to start chopping up some bits of wood. But before I start cutting bits of wood up, here is the bonding in the little locker at the aft end of the seating arrangement here, and you can see the glasswork in there, which so if I can get the camera in, you can see I've kind of glassed in the side there as well, and then all the glass that runs along the back there to tie that all in as well has been completed. Well, I've finished cutting all the joints in this wooden framework. I've just taken it all out again just to tidy up some of the joints, and I'm going to fit it now with glue and screws. I've got some quick setting epoxy which I'm going to use in all the little joints and to glue this piece here onto the back of the plywood. It's not super critical that it's really well glued because it's going to be screwed in place, and that's only just to hold the bunk tops that is going to go in here. There's going to be a little bit of a gap at the back here when that goes into there, and I'm just going to fill that with some thickened polyester resin, so just some polyester filler, and then once it's all in, I'm going to do what I did on my last one, that is to lay up some glass between these pieces and the hull just to make sure it's super secure. I like to do things once and once only. So I'm going to have to go out in the rain, unfortunately, because February it's raining, and grab some glue, and I'll show you it all in place shortly. Well, as you can can see, the framework is now all in and finished. I have just tidied up the little bit of glass that I've put in here and over here. I wanted to glass those in. I'll explain why in a minute, but it's time for me to get busy with the hot melt glue gun again and make a template for the bunk top. So just to explain, the reason I wanted to put some glass in around these joints onto the hull is not because I'm worried that this is going to get lifted away from the hull, but it's more about spreading the load. Whenever you've got something fixed up against the hull, there's always that risk of point loading, and boats are flexible structures to some extent, and so if the boat's getting pounded a little bit, it's going to be getting pounded against this kind of hard point, and what we want to do is soften that hard point by laying up some glass. And I've got about 4 layers of combi mat on each side of this piece of wood here, and what that does is it spreads out that hard point over a larger surface, so there won't be any hinging of the laminate around that piece of wood that's against there. I don't think it was going to be an issue, to be honest with you, but I wanted to do it, and it also helps tie it all into the boat. The other thing that is going to help the structure of the boat slightly, but not very much, is when the bunk top goes back in on the top here, it'll also get glassed in at the ends here. So this is effectively a stringer as well as a bunk front. This new stringer here is obviously adding quite a lot of structure into the boat to resist the hull from flexing in, but the bunk top will to some extent as well be doing that, and I'll probably just lay it in with a couple of layers of chop strand mat. But again, it's all adding a bit of structure into this port side, which is no bad thing. Right, without further ado, I need to warm up my hot melt glue gun and make up the template for the top of this. Back in the workshop now, and I have laid the template carefully on top of this sheet of 10mm, I think it is. Pretty sure it's 10mm, 9mm, 10mm, something like that. I measured the old stuff that came off the boat, and that's what it was, so that's what we're putting back on. So I'm simply going to mark around this. I've also written on this where the edges of the lockers, which are going to be removable, need to be. And then I'm going to cut it out carefully with my oscillating tool, which is not fast, but it is accurate. And I want nice, clean, tidy cuts, particularly where the locker lids that are removable and the fixed part are going to be butting up against each other. So I'm going to do that, and you can watch, or not, as you wish. It is all cut out, so we've got 1, 2, 3 locker lids. This is the piece that goes at the back, which will get bonded in. I cut it all out mostly with my oscillating tool. This is a Bosch oscillating tool. It's my favourite tool in my van, if I'm honest. I've had it for years. It's the professional version. It has been completely fault-free even, through many years of abuse, and there'll be a link to this in the description if you're interested in buying an oscillating tool. I cannot recommend this thing highly enough. It just keeps going despite all the abuse that it gets. I also chopped out the bit which didn't need to be cut so neatly with just a jigsaw, this piece around the back here, which is going to get glassed in, and then I cleaned up some of the edges just with a long sanding board just to tidy it up a little bit. So I'm going to go and take this all back to the boat, give it a little trial fit. I'm going to take this with me because it might need a bit of a tickle just to give enough clearance on the locker lids, but I'd rather do that on the boat than guesstimate it here. And because February, it's pouring with rain outside, so I'm going to have to run to the van. We have some bunk tops. Now, I'm not saying these slotted straight in. I did have to finesse them a little bit. In fact, I had to take a couple of mil off the backs of these ones all the way across. But they all go in nicely now, so I can lift them out. I've also popped some finger holes in as well. They all need a bit of a sand. These will get varnished eventually, so they'll all look nice and tidy. The next thing I'm going to be doing, you can see this has been screwed into place to locate it. I'm going to take these screws out, and then up inside here, all this locker is going to get flow coated. So the flow coat is gel coat with wax added to it so that it cures to a non-sticky finish. But flow coating right up in here is going to be really difficult. So what I'm going to do before I do any more glass work is I'm going to unscrew this top piece here, flow coat the bit that I'm not going to be able to access very easily, put this lid back on, and then I'll be able to lay up the glass that's going to go in here and tie this locker top into the boat. Now I've got the lid off again, you can see it's this area here and in here that is going to get flow coated before I glass the permanent bit of bunk top on. And it will be accessible because when you take the locker lid off, you'll be able to get a hand up inside here. But there's very little space to actually get in with a brush and apply the flow coat. And I want it to be a nice, clean, wipe downable surface. So whilst it's easy to access, that little section just at the back there, anything outboard of this piece of wood here will get a quick coat of white polyester flow coat, and then I'm going to put the lid on permanently and glass it down. There's some lovely gel coat. I've just mixed in a tiny bit more waxing styrene into this because this particular batch that I've got, I'm not sure if it has the correct amount of wax in it, so I just added a tiny bit more, just an extra 1% more. In theory, you have about 2% waxing styrene added to turn gel coat into flow coat. And maybe this was not quite enough when they mixed it up, who knows? But I'll catalyse this in a minute and get it on. There we have all the glassing done. If you managed to sit through that, then very well done to you. I'm now going to leave it for the day. It's about 5:30, 6 o'clock, so time for me to go and get a shower, get some food, and I shall return tomorrow. Well, as you can see, I'm back on the boat. It's another day. I've just been doing a whole bunch of sanding down in this locker here and this locker here because there was some paint in there. And you cannot flow coat or apply gel coat over paint for two reasons. The first is it will probably bubble and just make a horrible sticky gooey mess, and it will just look horrible. And two, even if it doesn't bubble up and make a horrible mess, it just won't really adhere. Now, I do know of a couple of well-known boatyards that have tried that, and then I've found it and gone, why the hell have they done that here? I suspect it was because it was Friday afternoon and whoever's doing the work was just trying to get off early, maybe. But I do know from experience it definitely doesn't work. So this is either back to the original flow coat layer that was on there, or in fact I've gone through sometimes to the wood or the laminate. So so this is all ready to be flow coated. I've just put some masking tape around, and the other thing I've done this morning is I've taken the locker lids off round to the workshop. They've had their first coat of varnish, so they're all looking nice. So what is flow coat? I can't remember if I explained what flow coat actually is. Flow coat is simply polyester gel coat that has some wax in styrene added to it and mixed in. You can make your own flow coat by adding wax, or you can buy flow coat. It's branded as flow coat, or sometimes it's called brushing gel coat or painting gel coat. So that's effectively what you do. So it's used on the insides of GRP mouldings. So when you lay up a piece in a mould, you'll put the gel coat on first. That will cure, and then you put glass on there to build up the laminate and make whatever structure it is that you're making. But on the inside, when you're finished, you end up with this just coarse glass fibre like you've got here, and you need to do something with that because polyester or vinyl ester will leave to a tacky finish, because anything that's open to the air will not completely cure. So you go over that with your polyester flow coat. The wax rises to the surface when it's curing, and that seals the surface so it will cure completely without leaving any tacky residue. And of course the benefit of flow coat is, one, it's very thick, so you can scratch it, you can scrub it, it's really easy to keep clean, it's far better than paint. And two, I've forgotten what the second one was because I'm slightly over caffeinated. I've had too many teas and a very strong coffee today to keep me going. It will probably come to me. Anyway, without further ado, which I think I've said quite a lot in this episode, without further ado, I'm going to mix up and catalyse some flow coat and get painting to get this all finished off. You can watch if you like, or you can fast forward. I don't mind. I'll show you the end result anyway. Well, there it is, all flow coated in the boat. I am going to lock the boat up and leave because it absolutely stinks of styrene in here, but I'm going to tell the boat owner that that's a feature. I'm going to say I've given him some new boat smell, because when you buy a new boat it always smells a little bit styrene-y because of the polyester that it's made from. So we've got some new boat smell going on here. I should charge extra for that, really. Once this is all cured, I'm going to bring the locker tops back down. They need a couple more coats of varnish, but once it's all done, I'll show you what it looks like. That might be another couple of days away because it's Friday now. I'll see if I can get a couple of coats of varnish on over the weekend, and maybe on Monday or Tuesday I'll show you the finished product. Well, it's been a couple of days since you have seen this. The flow coat has all gone off. The owner's even come down and had a look and was very pleased with how it's all turned out, which is the most important thing. There's a couple of things I've got left to do. I'm going to reinstate the hoses that go down to the water tank. They run through that locker. I've been waiting for those to arrive because I ordered them from a supplier off-site. The other thing is, and I wanted to show you this, is I've been varnishing the bunk boards which just fill in these locker tops, and I have them right here. So just off camera, we have, I have to get these the right way around. That one there. One for the other side. Just make sure I get it the right way round. That's the way it goes round. And lastly, the one that goes in the middle, which goes that way. And there we go. Not too snug, not too loose. Pretty happy with how that is all looking. So, job done. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already done so, please give me a thumbs up. It does make a big difference, as does hitting that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed already, genuinely, I really do appreciate it. Something like 15% of my regular viewers are currently subscribed, and I'd really like that to be a bigger number because it genuinely does make a big difference to how quickly I can grow this channel. So it just takes a second. Boop, that subscribe button. Thank you very, very much. There's also that link down in the description if you want to buy me a beer. If you are a regular financial contributor to me, buying me regular beers through that PayPal link, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate it. It does help keep the lights on. It does help me fund this channel. So thank you again to those that donate. See you next time. Bye for now.